Before anything else, a direct necessary correction, because this specific claim, if taken at face value, describes something that would not just be newsworthy, it would be one of the most catastrophic events in the history of our solar system. And it simply is not true. There's no object larger than Jupiter anywhere near Earth's orbit. No space agency on the planet, NASA, the European Space Agency, or any other national or private observatory, has reported anything remotely resembling this claim. And there's a very simple, very physical reason why a claim like this could never quietly slip past the entire global astronomical community unnoticed. This is the real story of why this specific kind of claim keeps resurfacing, what it would actually mean if it were true, and what NASA is genuinely tracking near Earth's orbit right now in the middle of 2026, which turns out to be considerably more interesting and considerably more reassuring than any invented planetary scare. Let's start with the basic physics, because understanding exactly why this claim cannot be true is more useful than simply being told to dismiss it. Jupiter is not a small object. It is, by a wide margin, the largest planet in our entire solar system, with a diameter more than 11 times that of Earth, and a mass more than 300 times greater, roughly 2.5 times the combined mass of every other planet in our solar system put together. If an object of that size were genuinely sitting anywhere near Earth's orbit, meaning anywhere within roughly 93 million miles of our own planet, it would not be a quiet, obscure discovery buried in a research paper somewhere. It would be visible to the naked eye from anywhere on Earth, likely appearing as one of the brightest objects in the entire night sky, rivaling or exceeding the brightness of Venus. Its gravity, comparable to Jupiter's own genuinely enormous gravitational pull, would be actively disrupting the orbits of Earth, the Moon, and every other object in the inner solar system, producing measurable, immediately obvious effects on tides, on the length of our own day, and on the stability of Earth's own orbit around the Sun, effects that professional and amateur astronomers alike would have detected and reported virtually instantly, using tools far less sophisticated than the observatories currently in operation around the world. To put the scale of this specific claim into perspective, it helps to compare it against the actual largest, closest known objects that genuinely have passed near Earth throughout recorded astronomical history. The closest an object of any planetary scale has ever come to Earth was Mars itself, during a particularly favorable alignment in 2003, when the two planets came within about 34 million miles of one another, still more than 140 times farther away than the Moon, and Mars itself carries only about 1/9 of Earth's own mass, a tiny fraction of Jupiter's scale. Comets and asteroids, the actual objects that do regularly pass through the general vicinity of Earth's orbit, top out at a scale of perhaps a few miles across for the very largest known near-Earth objects. A difference in size from Jupiter's own 86,000-mile diameter that is difficult to overstate, roughly the same proportional difference as comparing a grain of sand to an entire beach ball. There is, quite simply, no category of object that has ever been observed anywhere near Earth's orbit that comes remotely close to Jupiter's actual physical scale. And the specific combination of size and proximity described in a claim like this one exists nowhere in the entire recorded history of astronomical observation. This is precisely why claims like this one deserve real skepticism rather than simple curiosity. An object this massive cannot hide. It is not physically possible for something of Jupiter's scale to approach anywhere near Earth's orbit without triggering an obvious, unmistakable, globally observed catastrophe long before any single video or article could claim to have quietly discovered it first. Every major observatory on the planet, along with thousands of amateur astronomers maintaining their own telescopes and monitoring the sky every single night, would have already noticed, and every space agency with any credible planetary defense program would already be issuing emergency public statements, not a single quiet research note. It is worth understanding where claims like this one actually tend to originate, because this specific pattern is not new. For more than 2 decades, a persistent, repeatedly debunked internet claim has circulated involving a supposed hidden planet, often called Nibiru or Planet X, claimed to be approaching Earth on a collision course, threatening to cause catastrophic pole shifts, earthquakes, or planetary collisions. The modern version of this claim traces back to the 1990s, when a woman claiming to channel messages from extraterrestrial beings first predicted a catastrophic encounter with a hidden planet, a claim that was later loosely connected, without any genuine scientific basis, to a considerably older, considerably more legitimate body of work by the writer Zecharia Sitchin, whose own speculative interpretations of ancient Sumerian texts proposed a theoretical planet with an extremely long orbital period, an idea Sitchin himself never actually connected to any specific imminent collision with Earth. Over time, these separate, unrelated claims merged into a single recurring internet myth, repeatedly assigned new arrival dates, as each previous predicted date passed without incident, famously attaching itself to the widely publicized and equally unfounded prediction that the world would end in December of 2012 based on a misreading of the ancient Maya calendar. NASA found the Nibiru claim persistent and widespread enough, that the agency took the genuinely unusual step of directly and repeatedly addressing it in official public statements. David Morrison, a senior scientist at NASA's Ames Research Center, spent years personally responding to public questions about this exact claim, stating plainly and consistently that no such object exists, and explaining the same basic observational argument at the heart of debunking any claim like this one, that if a planet or brown dwarf-sized object were real and genuinely approaching the inner solar system, it would have already been tracked by professional and amateur astronomers alike for at least the preceding decade, and would already be bright enough to see with the naked eye by the time any such claim began circulating widely. Morrison further noted that an object large enough to cause the kind of catastrophic effects these claims typically describe would already be visibly influencing the orbits of the outer planets in ways astronomers would have detected years in advance. Precisely the same physical argument that applies directly to any claim about a Jupiter-sized object suddenly appearing near Earth's orbit today, without any comparable, publicly documented warning beforehand. Despite this repeated, direct, official correction from NASA's own scientists, variations of this same basic claim have continued resurfacing periodically for more than 15 years, simply attaching new dates, new details, and occasionally new invented statistics to the same fundamentally unsupported premise. Claims like the one in this specific headline tend to draw much of their persuasive power from borrowing real, legitimate-sounding language, references to scientists investigating official-sounding phrasing, real astronomical terminology, while attaching that language to a claim that has no actual observational evidence or scientific paper behind it whatsoever. So what is NASA actually tracking near Earth's orbit right now, since that question deserves a genuine, accurate answer, rather than simply leaving the record at what is false? The truth is both less dramatic and, in its own way, considerably more reassuring. NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Studies actively monitors thousands of real asteroids that pass through our solar system's inner regions, and several genuinely newsworthy close approaches have occurred throughout 2026 alone, each one carefully tracked, publicly reported, and confirmed to pose no danger whatsoever to our planet. In May of 2026, astronomers at the Mount Lemmon Survey in Arizona discovered an asteroid designated 2026 JH2, an object roughly 15 to 35 meters across, comparable in size to a blue whale that passed within about 57,000 miles of Earth on May 18th. Considerably closer than the Moon, but confirmed well in advance to pose no risk of impact. Richard Binzel, a professor of planetary sciences at MIT and the inventor of the Torino scale, the tool astronomers use to categorize potential asteroid collision risks, addressed the public directly at the time, explaining that this kind of close approach is actually a fairly normal occurrence, noting that car-sized objects pass between Earth and the Moon every week, and that school bus-sized objects do the same several times a year. Phenomena that have simply become newly visible to us because our survey telescopes have only recently become sensitive enough to detect them reliably. Binzel further explained that objects like this one typically originate from the asteroid belt, the region between Mars and Jupiter where countless small rocky bodies orbit, and that occasional collisions within that belt, combined with periodic gravitational tugs from Jupiter itself, gradually send small fragments drifting into Earth's general vicinity. A well-understood, entirely natural process that has been occurring continuously for billions of years, long before any human instrument existed capable of tracking it. Just this past week, on August 7, 2026, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory tracked another close approach, an asteroid designated 2026 OE1, comparable in size to a passenger jet, passing at a distance of approximately 1.82 million miles. A genuinely safe distance in astronomical terms, and one of several similar close approaches NASA's Asteroid Watch dashboard has publicly tracked and reported throughout the year. That same dashboard has also tracked smaller, closer approaches throughout 2026, including an object designated 2026 EG1, a bus-sized asteroid roughly 40 feet across that passed within about 198,000 miles of Earth in March, closer than the Moon's own average orbital distance, and 2024 $10, a somewhat larger object that passed at a more distant 3.23 million miles just days before the OE1 approach. NASA defines a potentially hazardous object as any asteroid larger than roughly 460 feet, whose orbit could bring it within 4.6 million miles of Earth, a specific, carefully defined threshold considerably smaller than anything resembling a Jupiter-sized object, and every object meeting that threshold is tracked, calculated, and publicly reported well in advance, not discovered quietly after the fact. Perhaps the most genuinely significant close approach currently being tracked involves an asteroid called Apophis, a genuinely large object by near-Earth asteroid standards, measuring roughly 1,200 feet across, which astronomers have calculated will pass within about 20,000 miles of Earth on April 13, 2029, closer than many of our own geosynchronous communication satellites currently orbit. Apophis was actually first discovered back in 2004, and in the years immediately following its discovery, preliminary orbital calculations briefly suggested a genuinely non-zero chance of an Earth impact during this same 2029 approach, a possibility that generated real serious attention within the planetary defense community at the time. Additional observations gathered over the following years allowed astronomers to refine those calculations considerably. And by 2021, NASA had definitively ruled out any possibility of impact during the 2029 flyby or during any other close approach for at least the next century. A conclusion based on precise, continuously updated tracking data rather than any single one-time estimate. Patrick Michel, a planetary scientist involved in studying this specific close approach, has described the reaction among astronomers to this upcoming event in genuinely enthusiastic terms, stating that scientists are not worried at all and are, on the contrary, very excited because a close approach this size and this predictable offers a genuinely rare, valuable opportunity to study a large asteroid up close using ground-based telescopes without needing to send a dedicated spacecraft mission to do it. Multiple space agencies are separately planning to send actual spacecraft to rendezvous with Apophis around the time of its 2029 approach, including a mission repurposed from NASA's own earlier OSIRIS-REx spacecraft, which successfully returned samples from a different asteroid in 2023 and has since been redirected toward this new target, precisely because a genuine, safe, well-understood close approach like this one represents such a valuable, rare scientific opportunity rather than any kind of threat. This is the actual accurate picture of what near-Earth object tracking genuinely looks like in 2026. Careful, continuous, publicly documented monitoring of real, relatively small asteroids, ranging from car size to, in Apophis's case, roughly the length of 3.5 football fields, each one tracked with enough precision that astronomers can calculate its exact distance from Earth years in advance, and none of them remotely close to the scale implied by a claim involving an object larger than Jupiter. The entire field of planetary defense exists specifically because scientists take the real, genuine risk posed by asteroid impacts seriously, and that seriousness is exactly why the actual tracking data is made so thoroughly public through tools like NASA's own Asteroid Watch dashboard, specifically so that anyone can verify for themselves exactly what is, and is not, actually approaching our planet at any given time, without needing to rely on a second-hand claim from an unverified source. It is worth offering a genuinely practical way to evaluate claims like this one whenever they appear online in the future, since this specific pattern tends to repeat itself with new details attached every few years. Any real, credible discovery of an object approaching Earth's orbit, regardless of its size, would be accompanied by a specific named observatory or research team, a formally published orbital calculation available through NASA's own Center for Near-Earth Object Studies or an equivalent international body, and independent confirmation from multiple observatories around the world, exactly the kind of verifiable cross-checked information that accompanies every genuine asteroid discovery currently being tracked. A claim lacking any of these specific checkable details, relying instead purely on vague references to unnamed scientists investigating something without any accompanying data, designation, or published orbital calculation, should be treated with the same skepticism as any other unverified claim circulating online, regardless of how dramatic or urgent it may be framed to sound. It is worth being direct about why this distinction matters, beyond simply correcting one specific inaccurate claim. Genuine planetary defense science depends on public trust, and that trust is built through exactly the kind of transparent, carefully verified reporting reflected in NASA's actual asteroid tracking data, all of it publicly available, all of it independently verifiable by observatories and astronomers around the world. Claims involving invented, undocumented objects of impossible scale actively undermine that trust, making it harder for people to distinguish between the real, carefully monitored asteroid activity NASA genuinely tracks every single day and baseless, manufactured claims designed purely to generate alarm and attention, rather than to accurately inform anyone about what is actually happening in the space surrounding our planet. There is a genuine cost to this kind of manufactured alarm that goes beyond simply wasting a viewer's time on a false claim. When legitimate, carefully calculated close approaches do occur, events like the 2029 Apophis flyby or the routine, smaller asteroid passes NASA documents on a near-weekly basis, the public's ability to correctly gauge the actual level of risk involved depends heavily on having an accurate baseline understanding of how this kind of tracking and reporting genuinely works. A public that has been repeatedly exposed to invented, wildly exaggerated claims involving impossible objects becomes, over time, considerably worse equipped to either recognize a genuinely concerning discovery if one were ever to occur, or to correctly dismiss the next round of baseless claims that will, with near certainty, continue to resurface in one form or another. Accurate science communication is not simply a matter of correcting individual false claims one at a time. It is about preserving the public's overall capacity to tell the difference between real, verifiable science and manufactured content designed to exploit genuine anxiety about the unknown for the sake of attention. It is also worth acknowledging directly why claims like this one remain so persistently effective, despite having no genuine factual basis behind them. Space itself is vast, genuinely difficult for most people to intuitively picture, and filled with real objects and real phenomena that already sound, on their own terms, somewhat difficult to believe. Black holes, interstellar comets, planets forming from ancient collisions billions of years ago. That existing sense of genuine cosmic strangeness makes it considerably easier for an invented claim to blend in alongside real, legitimately reported discoveries, borrowing the same general tone and vocabulary used to describe genuinely remarkable, verified science. This is exactly why directly comparing an invented claim against the real, actual data, real designations like 2026 JH2 and 2026 OE1, real name scientists like Richard Binzel and Patrick Michel, real institutions like NASA's Center for Near-Earth Object Studies matters so much. The genuine science, once you actually look at it directly, turns out to be more than interesting enough on its own without requiring any invented, physically impossible claim to make it worth your attention. So here is the honest, complete answer to the claim in this specific headline. There is no object larger than Jupiter near Earth's orbit. No credible observatory, space agency, or research institution anywhere in the world has reported any such discovery. And the basic physics of an object that size make it effectively impossible for such a claim to be true without every telescope on the planet, professional and amateur alike, having already noticed and reported it. What genuinely is happening near Earth's orbit right now is considerably smaller in scale and considerably better documented. A steady, carefully tracked stream of real asteroids ranging from car size to, at the largest end, roughly the size of a large office building, each one calculated, monitored, and publicly reported by NASA's own genuine planetary defense program. Exactly the kind of real, verifiable science that deserves your attention far more than any invented claim about a planet-sized object nobody has actually observed. The next time a claim like this one appears, describing some enormous, previously undetected object suddenly discovered near Earth, the single most useful thing you can do is check it against exactly the same kind of publicly available data referenced throughout this video, NASA's own Center for Near-Earth Object Studies, the Asteroid Watch dashboard, or equivalent tracking tools maintained by other national space agencies around the world. If a claim this dramatic were genuinely true, it would already be there, documented, calculated, and confirmed by multiple independent observatories, not simply asserted in a single headline with no accompanying data at all. If you want to follow the real, ongoing work of tracking genuine near-Earth objects, including the upcoming 2029 approach of Apophis, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the actual science here is genuinely fascinating, and it does not need any exaggeration to earn that attention honestly.